Neck-throughs, guitars, they're like a guy that you won't have a beer with you.
I want to hear what's pushing the notes.
Freddie King and B.B. King, Albert King, and let's not forget Burger King.
I don't want to blow my knuckle out.
Stainless steel is the work of the devil.
These go to 11.
From the East Amplification Tone Labs in Baltimore, Maryland, it's the Amps and Axes Show with your hosts, Jeff the Godfather of Low Wattage Amps Bober and Mick Marcelino.
Well, good day to you, Mr. Bober.
Good day to you, Mr. Marcelino. How be you?
Well, I guess we need to inform our listeners of a turn of events that's going to be coming down the road here. This is our, I would say, second to...
next to last?
Yeah, next to last broadcast as the current version of Amps and Axes as you guys have come to enjoy for the past
that's right.
4.5 years, right?
Right, yeah, definitely. And we hope you have been enjoying it. We've been enjoying doing it for you. Mm-hmm. But we're going
to retool, right?
Yeah, we're going to retool. We're looking at some different things, different options, different ways of doing things, different things to do. So, we'll have our guest this week and our guest next week, and we will remain in touch.
Yeah, there'll be more things coming out, and the Let's Press Pause that I do with Greg Mara, that will still be happening on a weekly basis. It and it's goofy, it's tongue in cheek. There's a lot of, what are you doing this and why aren't you doing that, and one of those things. It's not really in-depth interviews of any kind. Right. The other piece is that we're going to. We're not going away. We're going to, like we said, retool, and then we're going to come out with some stuff that we hope that will be able to get to more people.
Right, broader audience.
Yeah,
we absolutely are looking to broaden our audience.
Exactly, and we can't do that without you guys, and that's why we're trying to come up with a different format that hopefully will please a wider range of people.
Exactly. So if you haven't had enough people to turn on to this show for whatever reason at this point, hopefully when we come back, you will be able to turn more people onto it. So we look forward to doing that, and we hope you will be behind us.
Exactly. And then, of course, we always say you got to spread the word.
That's right.
All the social media in the world and every other avenue that we have taken only goes, it seems, so far. The Internet's a big thing, but it just doesn't seem to reach out as far as we need it to. And
that's too small
where,
at this point.
That's where you guys sharing it with your friends, your neighbors, and, of course, would you say Roman countrymen, right?
Friends, Romans, countrymen, even... I'll turn your enemies onto it. Your exes, whatever.
Hey, you know what? Some people have, because I've seen some of the comments, and I'm like, wow, that guy gave us 5 stars and bashed us to no end.
Hey.
And I was like, he did exactly what we asked, so that is great.
Controversy is good as long as it's 5-star controversy.
There you go, kids.
That's right. You heard that here first.
That's right. And, like hearing things first, we really like when you tell everybody that you heard us here first, because we hope that in the past 4.5 years have kind of separated ourselves from the other music podcasts, especially with getting very unique guests over these last 4.5.
Absolutely. Big ones and people you haven't heard of, and maybe a little twist and turn here and there, which is always good. I mean, come on, the same thing all the time for year after year is boring.
Exactly.
So we try to bring you as diverse a guest list as we can, without veering too much from the core here. But so that said, we're going to bring you another one today. Very interesting guest today. He was he was involved quite a bit at different labels when the record industry was when it was actually an industry. They recorded stuff and they made stuff and they sold stuff, and I don't know what to even call it anymore. But he was involved back then, and when it was time to wrap up that part of life, career, whatever it was, he saw he took another opportunity here to do good, we think.
Oh, yeah.
And he is now the owner of a very cool music school. And it's not just your typical music school. It goes further than that, and you'll hear about it in the interview. And we think it's very interesting, and it's noble, and we need more of this.
Yeah, and I guess if nothing else, and not to cut you off there, but before we get into the interview, if nothing else, it's an important thing, people, because and we say it in this interview. We kind of have our spiel at the end. It's an important thing to see this dwindling thing that we're kind of seeing a little bit of a trend. We'd really like to see that kind of go the other way. Bring music to young people, expose them to it in different ways, not just listening, but bring it to them, expose them, let them make their own decisions, but to not expose them is doing a terrible injustice to the kids in this country. Absolutely. And it's important, man. It really is.
And it's not just for music's sake. We want to save music too, and players. But it's good for the brain. It's good for the brain. It's good for the soul.
Yeah,
It's good for the heart.
I think it's how we've kicked the shit out of most other countries over the years.
Yeah. Well,
good brains.
Good brains. Well, we used to. Anyway, we still have some of the brightest.
Exactly.
But I'm not gonna say the other half of what I was going to say.
It's a different podcast.
That's a different podcast altogether. That's right. Maybe we'll start one of those too. So anyway, we're going to take a break, pause for the cause here, and we're going to come back with our guest of the week. Really interesting story. We really think you'll like this.
Yeah.
We're going to come back with a man named Mr. Jim Chambers.
Hey, this is Phil Valinsky from the band Wayland, and you're listening to Amps and Axes.
Okay, and we are back with our guest of the week, as promised. Someone who has been in the music industry for a little while, I guess, and decided to open his own interesting establishment. We'll just leave it at that. We'll get into the story. So please welcome to the show, Mr. Jim Chambers. Jim, how are you?
I'm fine. Thank you, Jeff.
Excellent. Thanks for taking the time.
You bet.
Cool. So let's see where to begin. You know what? I'm going to, Mick, if you don't have anything, because you usually have a little bit of we got the guest.
Yeah, it was strange. I've reached out to so many people over the years that I got this email, and I'm like, well, which person did I contact? How long ago was it? And it was one of the agencies, and a young lady said, "Hey, do you want to interview Jim?" And I was like, and she had kind of given me the rundown of what he was doing with the school, and us, Jeff, we are huge on getting education to music in any form, anywhere. And as soon as I heard that, I said, absolutely, because we know what's going on in the school systems, and we just had to talk to Jim.
Yeah, we are huge proponents of kids being exposed to music and taught whatever instrument should they choose to want that. So it just needs to be open to them. So we'll get to the school, but we're going to do what we always do, and we're going to jump in the Wayback Machine and find out where Mr. Jim Chambers was born and raised, and how you got into this world of music. So give us some history.
Okay. Well, often when I'm asked this question, it's, do you want the 5-minute story, the hour story? But maybe I'll just run with it, and you guys can let me know when to close my mouth.
Run with it, man. Run with it.
Run with it. I was born in New York. I'd rather not say the year, but back, I'm in my 30s, 40s years old. I was born in New York, and Dad was an IBMer. So we moved from New York to Raleigh, North Carolina. And I do remember in Raleigh distinctly really listening to music in a different way, because music changed from New York to Raleigh. So I remember, holy moly, what is a Southern rock? I have no idea. So distinctly remembering hearing Leonard Skinner and those type acts when I moved to Raleigh. At this time, I was 12 years old. So from Raleigh, I was just discovering what kind of music I like, and that was AC/DC, and Pink Floyd was quite a revelation, and Ted Nugent and Leonard Skinner, and all these amazing acts with just really amazing guitar players too. I really glommed onto them, including Van Halen, I got to say. So those were some early Raleigh influences. And then I moved to Tampa, Florida around age 15. And that was 9th, 10th grade. Again, Dad was with IBM, so we moved a bit. And when I got to Tampa, I remember when we would listen to the radio station, my friends and I would constantly play trivia, like who is that? And Naked Eyes, and who's the drummer? Who's the guitar player? And in order to become better at that game, I mean, I am this guy, I got to tell you. I used to go to Camelot Records or any record store, Peaches, wherever you live. I would go to those record stores with a notepad and start writing down not only the performers on the record, where it was recorded, who was the producer. Wow. And I don't know why. I think it was really just to win this silly trivia game of my boys riding around. But the truth is, it was so important to me. And I really glommed to it. So it was about that time, 15, 16, where I realized there was a business within music. And people made a living at that. They weren't just rocking out on stage and scoring chicks and going home. They actually, there was many sides to this. And as I, discovered that, I became more interested in it. Mm-hmm. I should say this entire time, I am a music junkie. I'm learning to play the drums. I am so freaked out about lead guitar players. And just to comment with maybe some of your listeners that are involved or listen to the podcast, I'll put some guitar-centric stuff on there. I was so into guitar players more than anything, and it started with, Eddie and Gilmore and Angus, and it never stopped. I really dug deeper, too. I went to Gary Moore and Rudolph Schenker and Mike Schenker, and went even deeper to, Tipton's and all of Maiden's guitar players. All I did was really, who's the best guitar player? And that's the records that I would listen to. And that would bring me to a lot of records. So back to Raleigh, from Raleigh, we moved to Tampa. Mm-hmm. And once I kind of realized that there were record companies, like where is Warner Brothers? Where is Capitol? What do they do? I asked my mom. Now, back in this day, making long-distance telephone calls was like, $10 a minute. And to be able to do that, you definitely had to get clearance. So I went to my mom. I said, look, can I call Capitol Records? And just, somehow, I did. I called Capitol. I got the operator, and I said, hey, I have a record store, and I need some posters. She goes, like, 1 second, and she just put me right back to the mail room. I said, I'm a new record store, which wasn't true, and I would love some B-52's posters. So sure enough, 2 weeks later, the biggest container of posters you've ever seen. I'm not kidding, like 35 pounds of paper shows up.
Oh, my God.
I'm like, jackpot. I'm so excited. I called SST Records, A&M, everyone you could think of. And before you knew it, my whole entire room as a 15-year-old was covered in the coolest rock posters that I didn't pay for. I could not believe it.
That's
hilarious,
ever.
Man. It's like, you said I have a record store. You meant I was in a record store, but I can see how that could get misinterpreted.
Wow.
Just like Trump the other day, wooden store, in line. But yeah, I that was such a passion of mine. I didn't know, at that time you don't know what your passions are, but I know going to the record store and making cassettes for girls and you name it. I did all of those things. And then I went to the next level because it was just a passion that I hadn't realized yet.
And what was the next level? Was that learning to play at that point?
Well, moreover, like, you know, if I liked Rat, man, I'm going to find every influence of those bands. You know, if I like Maiden, or I went and I would dive deeper into the music. Like, who did they like? So I really started to research music. Mm-hmm. And in addition to, you know, calling labels and trying to get posters. And I guess the nut of it is, once I decided or realized there was a business within music, I really wanted to pursue it, and felt lucky because, gosh, how many people are unable to figure out their path? So I was so lucky with those phone calls. It really was. I mean, I was able to do that.
So where did those phone calls? Did the phone calls lead anywhere other than, you know, getting posters?
No, honestly. Well, let me say, in addition to posters, you know, all labels have to send out play copies. So I would get free records to play in the store. Now, of course, I was feeling a little heelish, but let me tell you something. Free records to a 15-year-old?
Oh, man.
I mean, I couldn't believe it. And they would send me promos of the new Soundgarden demos, or, you know, I'd call Sub Pop. I really called a lot of indies after I realized that anyone would send you posters. Once I got done with the majors, I called every indie, and they would send you promos of everything. And I'll be done with this record store story, but let me tell you, they sent me postcards, every promo material item, for at least a decade. I was on their mailing list for a decade.
Jim, what is the statute of limitations on on phone fraud?
It's free stuff. So is there?
I got those things for years. It truly did continue.
So
so funny.
Did it come to you, or did it actually come to the name of some record store?
Oh my gosh, you had to ask. Okay, here's the kicker. I did make up the name of my record store. And it was called Black Circle Records. That was it. I'm like, Black Circle.
Oh my God.
True.
Wow, that's pretty damn funny, man. It's creative as hell.
It's one of the greatest stories ever.
It's creative as hell. I love it.
Well, thank you.
Let's see, how do I get free swag? And then, you know, just turns it to free records. Wow.
Free records. I was the coolest kid on the block. Nobody liked the records I listened to, but the guys in that carpool figuring out trivia, man, I was macking.
That's hilarious.
Oh my God.
So what was the next progression in your musical growth?
Right. So, you know, throughout this time I was playing drums, and I went through high school as a drummer. I didn't participate in theater or band or anything like that, but I did beat the heck out of my drum set every weekend on a regular basis, or all week. So, you know, I finished high school. I went to college in Valdosta, Georgia. And as soon as I arrived, I was so thrilled to know that they had a radio station there, WVVS, shout out. Nice. And as soon as I found out they did, I went over there and I got to be a jock. I had no idea what to do, but I did know how to play records. And I'll just run you through. I through that disc jockey and becoming part of the college activities board at the university, I started to really understand the different components of the music business, whether it's radio, booking, you know, acts, whether, you know, how does distribution work with regard to retail. And I was 18, 19 years old, but I did understand it a bit more. And then all of my studies throughout college, I would focus, if I had to write a report or give a speech, whatever it was, I would always make it about the music business. And so I continued to study it. All throughout college, too, I was in bands, and I would play. I was always in bands, sometimes 2 or 3 bands at a time. And so I got through college, and during college, I started to book all the bands for the fraternities and sororities. So all sorts of alternative acts were coming down from Atlanta. I was in Georgia, so we would tap Athens, Georgia. That was a hotbed at the time. Oh, yeah. And just try to get any acts from that part of the state to come to Valdosta. Lava Love, Insane Jane, Flat Duo Jets. There were tons of them. So I started booking all the acts for sororities and the club. And, I really wanted to be a booking agent. I was like, this is so great. I mean, and you could make some real money, like day of show. So it was great. And I graduated college. I moved to Atlanta immediately. And it was so fun. I didn't know. I wanted to be, like I said, a promoter. So I went and met with a couple promoters, and they're like, yeah, we'll start you today, but you make commission on your show, and good luck. And that just didn't work for me because I had to have a job like today. Mm-hmm. I needed a 9-to-5 somehow. So let me back up for a second. At this time, this is in 1990, 91, 92. And I just got out of college. So how do I go interview for a record label job? They don't advertise these things. They're not in the paper. And the internet was in its infancy. So back in the day, my father, he says, Jim, you need to network. I had no idea what networking meant. He goes, all right, let me show you how this works. Who do you know at the record store in Atlanta? And I said, a guy named Danny at Wax and Facts. He goes, call Danny up and say, hey, Danny, do you know anybody in the record business? I sure do. I know Bob over at Chrysalis, right? So I did that. And I called Bob at Chrysalis, and I went over to see Bob. He took my meeting. He was the branch manager of, I think it was Universal at the time. So there I was, just in a suit in a record exec's offices, completely fish out of water, but I knew that's the way I had to go. I'll keep it short. I started interviewing with a lot of these guys. They said, look, if you can't get into record business proper, go work retail. And I was like, okay. I didn't even really know what that was comprised. I didn't understand. In Atlanta, there was a retail chain called Turtles. They were in Florida too. Where are you guys located?
Just outside of Baltimore.
Okay, well, like Plan 9, but there were 40 stores, and
wow,
they had a management trainee program. So sure enough, I went over there with my suit on and started training at a retail record store. Cut my teeth there, learned the ins and outs of distro, release dates, when labels support things, why things are advertised, at what time. If you started to see the correlation of market indicators indicate those records would sell. Like all of a sudden, 50 kids come in looking for the new Charlatans record. It's because it was on the radio. So you start piecing together how it works, how records move through the store, and why they're priced the way they are. So I was really learning the foundation of music retail 101. I did that for 3 years. I got fired, and I'm glad. I'll just leave it at that. But I did keep there. One thing that happens at retail in the past, record stores don't exist anymore, is that all labels would have merchandising reps. These reps would come through the store, and we had designated space for them where they would do displays with posters. And, they like the Warner's rep would come in with the Pearl Jam flats and posters and make this big display. Mm-hmm. So all those people would come through the store, and I would just glom onto them. Like, how'd you get your job? Oh, my gosh. Are you having a party tonight? Can I come? Anything. Because that's the job I wanted. Being on a ladder, working for Warner Brothers, hanging posters, I would have given my left thumb. So I would go to all their little parties, and in Atlanta, the label system was strong. So there was all sorts of release parties and meet the artist and petting zoos, whatever it would be. So I would attend all of them and was invited to them because I was a retailer, right? So sure enough, a guy was there from a small record label called Sky Records. He needed somebody in the mailroom. It paid $10 an hour. I was like, you got it. I went to this record label and started in the mailroom on some strange Monday. Well, the same day that happened, Amy Ray of the Indigo Girls happened to own a distributed label through Sky Records. She was in the back warehouse, and I'm just chatting her up. Oh, my gosh, you're like the queen of the earth. She was. And in those days, Athens, Georgia was huge, and the Indigo Girls were at the top of it. Them, REM, and the B-52s. Huge stars. Mm-hmm. So there she was in my presence. She might as well have been Elvis. So I'm like, oh, my gosh, how are you? She went to the boss of the label and says, "Who's the kid in the back that won't shut up? Put him on the phone." So as you can tell, I haven't shut up in 27 minutes. So, well, you told me to go through. You guys got to tell me when to stop.
No, it's great. It's great because she was obviously right.
Yeah, man, I could talk. So
there you go.
So they put me on the phones. I start calling global retail, meaning every record store on the planet Earth. I call, make sure they have stock on our records. If they need posters, I'll ship them to you. That was me.
I know me posters.
Yeah. And I did that for a couple years. And as it was still an indie world, you know, the ceiling was low and there wasn't a lot of room to move out of that job. Mm-hmm. But I did really grind it out for 3 years on the phone, calling every retailer every one of them, forever. So that kind of became, you know, what should I be in the music business? Of course I want to sign bands. That's all I want to do. But now I have a fair amount of experience in sales. And I know every record retailer on the planet. I know the owner. Let's talk. So that gave me a skill set. I took that. I really wanted out of indie world. I finally found a major label job at Sony. It was BMG at the time, but it's Sony BMG. Mm-hmm. They said, "Hey, we'll give you a job, but you got to move to Miami and you got to hang posters, and that's how it's going to be." And I was like, "You got it. I'll jump in a U-Haul." I moved from Atlanta to Miami, took the merchandising job. I had Atlanta, Naples, Puerto Rico, Fort Myers. That was my territory.
Nice. Did
that for a couple years. Took on a couple sales accounts. They moved me back to Atlanta, and my title had changed. I got a raise and a bump to product development coordinator, which meant a regional, essentially. I would focus on only alternative projects that Sony would release, from Dave Matthews, Tool, even Outkast. I had a little crossover. I could go on and on about the alternative roster that I worked. And I would develop marketing plans regionally from Atlanta South for those acts. So when Dave Matthews came into the South, I was the marketing director for everything that he touched in the South.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, back then the major label system was vast, and they had the resources to have a guy hanging posters, a guy coordinating retail plans. I mean, all positions were filled, and it was effective. I mean, we were able to break artists. But it was that's what you don't see anymore, and I think that's why the industry has become so difficult to people. You know, it's not only because there's nothing behind the artist, there's no support behind the artist. You know, there's no recording budget, there's no distribution budget, there's no anything, but there's no push for the artist once the product is done. You know, everything has turned around to being grassroots again, and that's why only a few are I guess blessed with the support of a major label. You know, for every one, there's thousands that don't get any support anymore. Oh yeah, that's true. I mean, if at all, there's a skeletal staff at most labels, and you know, artist development is not nearly what it was even 10 years ago, 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure. It's not there.
I mean, I would say at least 85% of my colleagues and friends that were in the music business, which were a lot, don't work in the business anymore. 85% of them are out. Mm-hmm. And I would say the music business is comprised of 1,500 people in the United States. If you just look at label world, so it's pretty small.
Yeah, for sure. So how did you get from, you know, I guess it must have happened when labels were dying and things, but how did you take the next step in your career?
Well, at this point, I really am in the infancy. Whereas, you know, I'm 25, I'm a regional guy at a large distribution company putting together a marketing plan. So I'm at Sony. I love the job. Everything's great. And then I got fired. I couldn't believe it. And I'll be honest, I might as well be. So I won't go into the details because some of it's a little crummy, but I got into an altercation with a guy and we had just some words, and the words were overheard by somebody that really was offended by them. And that went straight up to corporate, and corporate HR said, you got to go. So I left Sony BMG in 96, and I was devastated. I'm not going to lie. I wanted that job. I loved it. I was living the music business thing, and I was thrilled. So I didn't know what to do. I mean, I had some experience, and Atlanta's a small market. So I started to cast my net, to New York or California or Chicago. And at the time, Chicago was a really burgeoning scene with the Pumpkins and everything. So I was looking in those markets to move. I was ready to go. Well, sure as heck, my mentor found out about a job in New York at Sire Hybrid Records, and I got the job. So in 96, I moved to New York City. And
nice.
That job was National Director of Sales for Sire Hybrid. Some of the artists I work, none too sexy, but Art Garfunkel, Guster is still a touring act.
Mm-hmm.
Worked on some crossover Sire projects, but it really allowed me to work in label world. Like, you're very close to the artist. All day long. And you have to think, like, when you work for a label, you really work for an artist, and you work 8 hours a day on your artist. So I'm in that mindset today still, as I do manage some acts. But all I do is think about that artist and how I can break them. So that's where my focus was. How, I was in the think tank in New York City. We're busting balls. We're making great marketing choices, and we're breaking artists on a global level. So I was living the dream. I was really excited by that. This is all positive and good. I was there 7 years. It was awesome. I was ready to make a move. And from that company, I went to a small, let me get this right. Yes, there was a company called Octone Records, and they were courting me, meaning they knew I was making some moves in the marketplace. They did know I was looking to jump ship, and Octone offered me a job. So we went through a negotiation process that I must say was lengthy and great. I had to watch out for myself. I didn't want to leave a 7-year job, and I'm leaving that job for a startup, essentially. Octone Records had one band on the label, and it was a cassette tape by a band called Maroon. And I heard the demos, and there was one song in particular, Sunday Morning, that I thought was really strong. And this was on the tail end of the boy band thing. So the last thing I wanted to hear was another boy band.
Right.
But this boy band could play their instruments, and they were quite good. So we figured out a plan. How are we going to – first we had to change their name to Maroon 5 because there was already a Maroon. And I took the guy – to be brief, I took the guys on the road for 2.5 years straight from – the U.S., Japan. It took 2 years to break that act. Straight up and down. There were other acts on the label, of course. I think there were 7 in total during my tenure. Flyleaf was on the label. They had a great run at Christian rock, and then also Michael Tolscher made some waves. But Maroon 5 was definitely the crown gem, and we worked our tail off for that band. And it was great. Great successes all around.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And they were, when they started out, because a friend of mine had turned me onto that band, when they started out, they were different than they wound up being.
Yeah.
And I, not that I don't like the current stuff, but the early stuff was really good and really soulful.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it when I first saw it. I said, wow, man, I love these guys. I just, I love what they're doing,
Yeah, I'd agree. Like, I don't think I realized the soulful, it's really James' guitar playing that ropes that in, that really, I'm trying to reference that other guitar player from the Ohio Players, but that just real groove-oriented, jangly groove that James brings. I didn't realize how good that was until, probably a year later. Like This Love or whatever it was. Those were great groove tracks.
Oh,
So
yeah.
they worked on radio. I didn't really think that project had a life at radio, but sure enough, our radio department was great, and they made it happen.
Nice.
But to your point, Maroon 5 was originally called Kara's Flowers, and they had a deal, but they were actually kind of like Weezer, and then they reincarnated into Maroon 5, and that first record, Songs About Jane, you know, it was a rock record, but it had soulful, groovy stuff to it.
Yep.
That I would agree with you, Jeff, that, you know, I do like the earlier material, as the newer material really is just straight up pop. I mean,
right.
Still got sexy guitars in it, and, you know, the lyrics are fine, but it's just pop.
And, you know, I think they're a little successful at it.
Adam Levine, could you please send me 25 G's? You heard it.
Thank you. Yeah, Adam found his falsetto and the pop market, and damn, took off.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that you know, when they put a new record out, I don't know that you could find a bigger artist at that particular time. I mean, Adam's killing it, the band's killing it.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Absolutely.
I have a little story, and maybe you know this, Jim. I heard them. I forget where they were interviewed. I think it was either Stern or it was Adam Carolla. And they were talking that the way that they get paid is whoever writes the song gets the majority of the money. They divide it up that way. It's not like a whole band thing.
That's true. Yeah. And I'll say this too. That's broken up so many bands. I don't know if you're aware, but Queen is a good example. And truthfully, I don't know the songwriter split in that band, but a lot of smart bands, they split it down the middle. Just everybody gets a piece. But if you got a songwriter that's really writing some sick lyrics and it feels that they are very proprietary, yeah, they're going to want a different split. And they usually do get a different split, and it sometimes wrecks bands. That's true.
Yeah, I remember it's the movie Hired Gun. In there, that guy from 311. Because he played with Trent Reznor, right? Isn't that what it was? I think the guy that owns 311 was in Trent Reznor's band, was getting paid next to nothing, and decided to go do his own thing, did 311, and then just said, nah, I pay my guys, they made like a couple $100 a night. And he was like, and, you know, guys were rolling in and out of that band like they were on a door. Because they were out there killing it, and they were getting not even what you would consider, I guess, scale.
Right.
And, isn't Cheap Trick that way? Like, isn't Rick Nielsen own all the rights to the music? Yeah. I think I heard that too, and like that really caused some heat between him and what's the drummer's name? Bunny
Carlos. Yeah,
like that like was a huge falling out between those guys.
Well, you know, that's interesting. I'm a big fan of the band, and I didn't know that. And I would guess Robin wrote it, but I don't know who did.
It kind of slipped. It was one of those interviews again. It was either Stern or Carolla, because I'd listened to both of them. And it kind of passed over the lips of somebody, and I think it was Xander. And because Nielsen had like said something about not making money, and they were like, "You own it all," and it just got blown over at that point. Because it probably ruffled some feathers. That laundry was being aired.
But I mean, that's one of those things where it's got to be dealt with and pen to paper early on.
Well, if you remember,
so nobody gets their feelings crushed later when they didn't realize that they didn't own any of the songs that somebody else wrote.
Well, if you remember, Jeff, our own Kicks from Baltimore, Donnie, right? Wasn't he the bass player?
Yep.
He went without the band ever knowing and inked all the deals, and it made him all the money. And if you remember correctly, Jim, Kicks with what was the name of the song, Jeff, that was on MTV's their top 10 or top whatever it was. Remember they had a every day. It was
I think their biggest song was probably "Blow My Fuse."
Yeah, was it?
Oh, Don't Close Your Eyes.
Don't Close Your Eyes.
Don't
That's
close
right.
Your eyes. Yeah.
And that was on MTV. What was the name of that show that was on every day? I forget what it was.
Daily Show, or it was Carson's Countdown or whatever.
Yeah, Well, that video was in the top 10 for God knows how long.
Yeah.
And from what from what you always hear the rumors, Donnie has a very nice house in Hagerstown, and has its own lake.
He no
I
longer
think.
plays with the band.
Exactly, and he let the name lapse, the actual trademark on it, because they bought it back.
Right. And they're out there kicking ass again.
Yes, they are.
It really is often a contention point for a lot of bands. And you're right, Jeff, it should be mapped out front and center before anything starts. Like, if you write this, you get this and that. Because, man, it's broken up a million bands. I mean, including Pink Floyd and everybody. A lot of bands.
Yeah, and that's a shame because, the formulas that some of those names that you mentioned, it's like you're robbing the people of something that's really
bands that it would never be, and this is probably a good majority of the bands that would never be the same without those particular members in the band.
Absolutely.
Those are the kind of bands it's like, well, everybody's kind of worth as much as everybody else is, kind of thing, I mean, it's, later on, if successful bands are going on and they're hiring utility players and things like that. And, of course, all of that, you get paid what you get paid. If you're not writing and you didn't write the big hits, it's fine. It's the way it is. But, a band starting up and growing up, and you're all contributing, especially if you're all contributing, you really got to work that out in the beginning.
Yeah, that formula is hard to reproduce with others, right?
Yep. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. For sure. So where did we leave off, Jim?
Let me think. Let's see. I was at Sire, Hybrid Sire.
No, we were in the middle of Maroon 5.
Maroon 5. All right. So we were talking about breaking that band, or what?
Well, they were doing well.
I'm with you. So we're at Octone, and Maroon 5's having grand success, and here we go. I got fired again. All right. I'm not gonna lie. I don't care. I'm a crazy.
Well, look, man.
But things happen.
You're nothing if you ain't consistent.
Yeah. At this stage of my career, we were doing contracts, right? So you sign with a label, like as an executive, you would sign to the record or to the label, and they'd say, all right, we're going to employ you for 2 years. At the end of that 2, we renegotiate. And so it was cool, but I did not expect it to be let go. It was a real shock. We were having incredible success. So, but that's just part of the career, it happens. And it wasn't anything gross. It was just a change. And so that happened. So there I was in New York, coming off the success of Maroon 5, looking for work desperately because, you got to pay rent in New York, and I had no savings to speak of. This is a little TMI, but you got to go to work. So I immediately was looking for work. VH1 hired me as a consultant. I worked in their consumer marketing department. Not for long, for about 9 months as a consultant. I would put together I Love the 80s television shows, a lot of that programming that was geared towards airlines, also theme parks. We would create these I Love the 80s snippets. If you're ever on an airline and you see like a 15-minute version of that show, that's what channels like that do. They make abbreviated broadcast and just put them on airplanes. They sell it to them. And I did a lot of that for them with, whether you see Best Buy, VH1, any of that sort of stuff where it was in retail piping, video piping. So I did a lot of that for only about 9 months. I was desperately looking to get back with a label, and a great opportunity landed on my lap. The owner of Warped Tour, who's Kevin Lyman, and to me, the Pope of punk rock, and also a real treasure to have in the music business, of Saint, hired me. As he has a label called Warcon, and Warcon was the amalgamation of Warped Tour and a marketing company called Concrete Marketing. Concrete Marketing did all the heavy metal marketing from 1978 to current. I mean, every single Headbangers Ball Band, everything you could think of. This particular guy, Bob Chaparty, shout out, that started Concrete Marketing, marketed those acts. So these two decided to make a baby, Warped Tour and Concrete, and they called it WarCon, and they needed a GM, and they hired me. So I was so excited to have this job. I mean, working with Warped Tour bands, young people, vibrant, kick-ass punk rock. That's where I live. I love this stuff. Let's just go kill the world with our music. I was so excited. I had a staff of 40. I was ready to get started. So there we are. We're all of our bands are integrated into the Warped Tour system. All of our marketing channels are set up because it's so integrated. We're having really good successes. We're finally putting some real indie bands in the top 200 on Billboard, and that really was with my leadership. I was very proud of this job. Well, sure enough, Wall Street came knocking and offered WarCon 51% ownership of the label. And I wasn't really privy to those meetings. So Wall Street came in and bought WarCon. And so Kevin and Bob kind of were, kind of ghosted a bit. And then I was kept on. They liked me. They kept me around. And I was now to report directly to Wall Street. Oh, boy. Wow. So this changed the game of my amazing punk rock label. Now I got to go talk to Wall Street.
It's almost, diametrically opposed.
It's not completely. It's like, I'm not really. I have punk rock ethos all day, but I don't have too many piercings and tats. But all my employees do out the wazoo. So, so it was cool, and I think that's partly why they picked me. I could communicate. So, there we were. Wall Street starts the hatchet job. Within a year, my staff of 40 was down to 20. Within 18 months, the staff was at 10.
Jesus.
Yeah, right? And then we stopped signing acts. We stopped even our A&R department. We're not signing any more bands. So before I knew it, long story short, I turned off the lights at that label. I was myself, the Wall Street dude who was patting me on the back, and that was it. And that lasted about 3.5 years. And I really loved that place. And I to this day, I mean, I own a music academy now, but I bring 30 students to the Warped Tour every summer. This year it's August 4th, and Kevin brings us on his bus and shows us everything. It's a really great relationship that I have with him.
Nice.
So,
I want to interrupt real quick.
Please.
So this is once again, Jeff, when suits ruin everything.
Yeah.
And they walked into Gibson. And you saw what happened to Gibson, and they walked into that record label, and they shut the doors. I swear to God, I don't know where in the hell they thought one day that it was a great idea to put their coke habit before anything else, because they don't care about what's going out the door. They care about what's coming into them.
My question is, obviously due diligence has to be done before somebody comes, not only is going to buy you, but comes to you and says, hey, we'd like to buy this. So, and to turn around and to do that, what did they think they were buying? It's like,
they thought they had a better idea. You see that, right? It's the same way with Gibson. They thought that the Firebird X was going to be the thing that was going to set the world on fire. They dumped like a ton of money into that turd, and they never sold one. And I will always go back to that thing, because that was when I saw that, I was like, okay, there's your assless chaps on David Lee Roth, because that's what it is. It is the jumping of the shark of the company. And as soon as they get involved, it cracks me up how they're like, they think that, because they probably saw an expense going out the door a little bit, and they thought, oh, well, we got to cut these corners, and they put some guy on there, right? And now you got to start losing people, and you're going, the ship is sinking, anybody? And then they're going, yeah, can you turn the lights off?
I mean, the ship takes all these people to keep it afloat.
Yeah.
And these people were keeping the ship very much afloat, and you liked the way the ship was floating. So then you turn around and go punch a hole in it.
It's really punk rock there, Boyd. I tell you what.
Oh, God.
I'm telling you, I was, and you kind of don't really realize it's happening. It's kind of like, okay, well, yeah, maybe we can not make that video for $9,000. And then before you know it, you're like, oh my gosh, they've chopped everything.
Yeah.
They're slick, and there were plenty of cutbacks, but they did do the bean counter routine. Like they would look at a project, this sold this didn't do this, scrapped. And they creamed the product. They took the 10 gems from the label, and the rest of it can just go die. And it continued to die.
Jesus. Yeah. That's a very sad story, man.
It is, but not atypical.
No, very common.
That's the other sad part. It's not atypical,
Right.
Let me just tell you an adjunct story. I'll be brief. I'm sitting in there. There was 2 Wall Street guys, and they were cool, and they were approachable. But let me tell you, they looked like $600 million every time they walked in the door. So there they are in their $5,000 shoes, and they're talking to my band that's from San Diego that can barely make rent, that are, I'm sure, high as poop. And they're just sitting there, and the Wall Streeter guys are talking about their horses that they just bought. I was speechless, and I told David, one guy, I said, let's not talk about horses anymore. So how about that radio program? And he kept coming back to horses, and I finally, after the meeting, I said, guys, you can never talk about your wealth in front of these people. I mean, they're homeless when they're not in their van. So it's like there was a real separation. I had to separate Wall Street from my artists. Like, you can't talk to them. No, go away. And that happened.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's such a huge disconnect. They don't have a clue. They don't have an idea of what an artist goes through to get somewhere. Like a serious full-time artist, they have no clue.
No, none.
Yeah.
Like, if you were to give my guitar player $300, they would have changed his life. They don't even.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and these guys are all they're they've gone to college. They've obviously either a CPA or something in that in that realm, and they probably haven't seen too many hard days. They probably got out of college and went right into somewhere where they started making money, and then they're trying to relate to the guy that's living in the van.
Granted, they may have had to intern somewhere to do some things, and maybe you eat a little bit of ramen. Yeah. But the thing is that they have risen to the point that they're at that time, and there's a very good chance that any artist they speak to, one out of 100,000, ever has the possibility to get anywhere near that.
Oh, absolutely.
And they just. Yeah, there's a huge disconnect there. So where'd you go after you turned the lights off for the last time?
Man, I turned Warcon's lights off, and I sat for a minute. I was in Brooklyn again, needing to make an income immediately, and I just hit the pavement. What can I do? So the guy that put me in the mailroom at Sky Records, he was running. He was national director of something at Redeye Distribution. I called him. I'm like, yeah, I'm looking. What's up? And he goes, hey, we got a global A&R position open. I'm like, you're kidding me. A&R stands for artist and repertoire. Mm-hmm. This is the guy that signs all the artists, all the label deals, distribution. He's involved in buying beer for the band and making sure their contract's done. So it's a big job. I'm like, man, I would kill for that job. He goes, Jim, I know you could do it. I mean, he knew that I had some ears, and I got hired. I couldn't believe it. So this company was based out of Chapel Hill, North Carolina. I was their New York liaison who really maintained a presence in New York. So I was out every day. I mean, one day I'm having lunch with Sharon Jones and Dap Kings. It could be anybody, just tons of indies, Metric, hang out with TT and the Bear, all these guys that were through Redeye. That was part of my job, signing them, taking them to lunch, a big, fat, nice job, and I really liked it. And I worked from my home. So it wasn't cushy. It was ridiculously busy, 7 days a week for sure. Mm-hmm. So what happens there is this: as soon as I started, they were downsizing. They laid off their IT guy, and I started getting nervous. I signed Loudon Wainwright, right? I go out, I sign Loudon Wainwright, and sure enough, Loudon wins a Grammy for this project. And I'm just riding high. I'm getting a bonus. Everything's awesome. I think I might even go to the Grammys. Well, then they laid me off, guys. And I was, all right, let me get and I really went at them about this. I said, I am your top sales guy. Why would you lay me off? I'm not even a sales guy, but I just want a Grammy for this company. Hello. They laid me off. And I was just like, all right, okay, bye.
Wow.
Let me just try to bring this all back quickly. So I'm in New York City. I've been through my 5th or 6th record job. I've had successes, highs and lows. I'm going bananas. And I'm kind of over the music business. I see the writing on the wall. I mean, not because of Napster and stuff, just the streaming and free music. And you see retail really start to erode. I mean, Best Buy, all these big box retailers, towers collapse, Virgin Megastore, all the chain stores are just collapsing. I see the writing on the wall. I'm like, I just got to switch gears. And I always envied people that could just move somewhere and just change. I wasn't raised that way, but I really wanted to try it. Okay, so I'm done with New York. I kicked my girlfriend out. I moved to Tampa where my parents are, en route to Costa Rica. I'm going to go to Costa Rica, and I'm going to open a pizza joint, right? I've been studying how to make Brooklyn pizza for a couple months. I'm ready to go.
I love it.
Do you guys edit?
Yeah.
Only a little bit.
A little bit, yeah. We don't.
Because somebody just arrived for me. But let's continue. But I think my time's becoming a little limited, if respectfully. Okay. So I'm in Costa Rica. I get down there. I'm spending 2 weeks. I'm going to, suss out the pizza situation, find some retail space. And sure enough, this is in 2009. The global economy is collapsing.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
They already had 5 pizza joints. There's so many unfinished buildings there. I'm like, this is not going to work. So I decided not to do that. Came back to Tampa. I'm scratching my head. What's chapter 2 going to be like? I really did not know. Then I still had the idea I was going to move to. At this time, I had a business partner who was interested in Belize. We were going to go to Belize and open a restaurant. We go down to Belize. We find a restaurant. It turns out my partner is such a freak. I can't even believe that he's like this outside or not within the guise of his darling wife. Anyways, he took us to a freak show. So that was the end of that.
Wow.
Tampa, and I still didn't know what to do. And in my particular community, there's a place there. We have a cultural center, and I go down to the cultural center, and they teach basket weaving and painting and whatever you want. So I said, "Hey, I teach drums. I'd been a drummer throughout this time. I can teach drums. How about a group class?" And they said, "Absolutely, we would love that." I started teaching drums for the kick of it. I got 5 kids. I bring 3 drum sets down to the cultural center. I rent their PA system, turn it up so loud it drives the place crazy. I'm making so much noise, Jack Black style. Kids are going crazy. They love it. I mean, really turn the place on its head. And they told me that you can't do that anymore. But I ignored them. So at the end of the class, I can't, don't tell me to turn it down. So
right.
At the end of 2 weeks class, all these students are like, "Hey, do you teach drum lessons?" I'm like, "I do now." So I'm in my parents' house. I'm living with my parents now. I have a drum set. I start teaching out of my high school bedroom. I'm teaching drum lessons. I can't believe it. Wow. So I go back down to the cultural center. I teach another 2 weeks, and I get another 10 students. So then I'm like, all right, I'm just going to teach for a bit. This is fun. I love giving back to students. I'm able to teach and communicate effectively. They're learning. I'm seeing the fruits of my labor. I can't believe how fulfilling it is. And I'm really getting just so excited by the prospect of being a full-time instructor. So I started Jim Chambers Percussion Party. I had 25 students. It's just me, a drum set, and the kid. It's going fine, but I'm getting a little burnout. It's a tough slog.
Yeah.
An investor came knocking. They said, "Hey, what would you really like to do?" And I said, "Well, I'd like to open a full-blown music school, but not in a strip mall, not next to some awful karate shop. I want to do it in a large home like Hogwarts, just like Harry Potter." So I got a 6-bedroom. So I went out and I got I think it was a 5-bedroom home. I lived in the master. The other bedrooms were drums, guitar, vocal, and piano, I think. So there I was in this giant home with a pool, thinking everything's awesome. I've got like 60 students. It's working. It's crazy, but it's working. The HOA, which I didn't even know what that was.
Oh, boy.
You can't have a business here.
They said, "We know you're not selling crack, but you cannot do that here." And I'm like, "Why not?" So they kicked me out of there. So here I am with 60 students, $20,000 in equipment. What do? I don't have the resources to go open a retail store. I just didn't. Mm. So it was a really tough time. I didn't know what to do. So I opted to do a Kickstarter campaign. Kickstarter was still new. Wow. Sort of new. This was in 2000. This is in 2014. Yes, okay. 2015.
Okay.
So it wasn't everybody wasn't bombarded at this point with crowdsourcing. I raised $20,000. I opened a retail store. It's it's just an amazing place where we teach all of the instruments: bass, drums, guitar, vocal. We have a very robust band formation program where I'm able to take my past, career skills and really kind of apply it to artist development. How do you work the press? How do we work social? Are we going to make a record? Let's make a record. How do we put it out? What is, how the whole process, soup to nuts. I QB this band program to the point of where we're putting out records. We're playing the Orpheum. We're getting mentions in our local, Counterculture Weekly. So we're making an impact. And I can't state how happy that makes me that not only am I giving back to young people and able to really make a difference in their lives as a positive role model, teaching them something. I'll never forget my first music teacher, and I make sure that they'll never forget me. And to give that back to them in all sorts of ways, whether it's via guitar, all my instructors are charged with the same thing, or bands, or making impact, or these kids can all say at one point that they made a record when they were 13. That is bananas. Mm. And
do you record in-house?
No, we go to a studio, do the whole thing.
Wow.
Yeah. And it doesn't suck. It's real recordings. They're real songs. They're on iTunes. We make EPs. We make vinyl. And so that now has perpetuated into a very robust band program with me at the helm. And that kind of brings us up to current. I have a music school that's, you have about 80 students. We have 4 bands under management that we keep in place. And we do real gigs, real shows, and trying to make an impact and truly create culture and change culture where I live currently. And that, to me, really does go back to roots of why I'm on Earth. Why do I live here? To promote, perpetuate music. And that has come full circle for me. And that's how I feel, yeah.
Look at that.
Wow. Yeah, man. It's one thing for a kid to have a couple of lessons and, maybe the teacher sucks and they never go back. The other, but at least they were exposed, maybe not in a great way. But there's some people aren't even fortunate enough to have their parents get them some lessons. Yeah. There's no more music in schools anymore for the most part that I know of or we know of. Mm-hmm. But for them, it's one thing to get lessons and even find a good teacher, but to get into an environment where it's much more than that. There's mentoring and there's some business of aspects of it, and there's recording, and it's like I don't know that I know of any other place like that. No. I really don't. Yeah. Yeah, that is so cool.
Yeah. I don't either, respectfully, and thank you. The fact that I can continue to work within, a space that I love, and it's just a part of me, and actually work with a younger skewed when you start them young, it's amazing. I just can't imagine what these kids are going to be like at 25. I really can't. Yeah, and the impact it will have on where I live, Tampa, I do think it will change the music landscape. I know that's a grandiose statement, but I do think that if you've got 200 kids that have gone through my school over the course of 5 years, those 200 people, 20 of them are going to will form 5 bands that will play in Tampa. So they're going to impact.
Yeah. And that thing, it's what's the norm right now is kids are learning how to kill other people through Fortnite, and it's so I don't even know what would you call it, Jeff. It's just there's no energy being put into anything like music and stuff. And when they take it away from the schools, then of course if the parents don't say, hey, there's this cool school that you may want to check out, and that thing not being available everywhere, dude, we're behind you 1,000,000% because it needs to change. We're starting to, Jeff and myself, we went to NAMM and we heard from people, but we also kind of saw it. The herd is getting thinned out.
Yeah.
For the young guys, not the old guys. The young guys are not participating as much as we would like to see. Because, there's got to be this next generation, And we're seeing more of these guys that are just alone in their rooms doing EDM songs on guitars. Now, look, that's music. They're creating it, but it's not bands. We've interviewed some of those guys, too.
Right. Absolutely. And some of them are the ones we've interviewed are doing well. They're making a living at it.
Yeah, very well.
But the thing is that, it's everybody for themselves nowadays. The record companies aren't there. We all know this. So even for somebody to get involved, you have to want to be able to play well enough to think you can make something of yourself in the first place. So that in and of itself takes time and determination, and whatever else you want to call it.
Yeah.
But then to already know that you're in this by yourself, no matter where you want to take it next, it's going to be an uphill battle, and you're going to have to learn the ins and outs yourself. You're going to have to do everything yourself. You have to school yourself on everything, because that's the only way it gets done nowadays. Well, this is a little different. This gives, I think it gives a person a lot more hope. It's like, okay, when I get to that point, there's an organization that is able to help me take the next steps. That is so freaking cool. There's just, it really should enable people to get into it with less of a, I'm going to say defeatist attitude. And that's probably not right, but it's for a far less uphill battle than what they would have strictly 100% on their own. That's just really cool, man. That's really cool.
It sounds like Jim's giving them everything from the beginning to the end.
And this is coming from experience.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like you'd be a fool not to take that advice. But
I wouldn't give it all back, guys. I say to I have kids that just drop in and say, look, I'm just out of high school. I'm dying to be in a band. I've got this talent. They'll sing for me. I don't know where else to go. I have nowhere else to go. What do I do?
Man, weird.
I love those calls. Get in here. Let me see what you got. And I wouldn't turn them away, but often these people have talent, and I get them right in a project.
How strange is it? I'm sorry to cut you off, but how strange is it that you would get a call from a singer that says he can't find a band?
I can't. I'm telling you.
How in the hell is that even possible in today's world? When guys, when you were doing it, when we were all doing it, the singer was the hardest person to find. Yeah. Bass players were the next guy, and when you found one, you held on to that guy, and if he was dying, you were giving him blood transfusions.
If he was something special, it's like, okay, this is...
Can't let it go. You would kill somebody if somebody tried to steal your singer if that guy was any good. And to hear that now, that's scary, man.
I mean, look, we all know the School of Rock and similar franchises that are out there now, and they do take kids and they do figure out songs with them and put them together in bands and do showcases and things like that. But I'm pretty sure that that's where that stops.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And yours doesn't, which makes it so much cooler, in my opinion.
Yeah, man.
That's really cool.
That's exactly what, when I saw, before I opened this joint, I looked at every school. I went to all of them. And I looked at, a couple of them do have band formation. Well, they do it for a month or 6 weeks, and then they stop. And that's it. And then they do a round robin, like, okay, let's put him in that band and that. No. I like that idea a lot. But what if we just keep the bands like they become a real band? And they're treated like a real band. And, they have a manager and, somebody that's coming to them weekly and saying, okay, we got a gig Saturday. We got to get this poster out, market. Who's on socials, and have real focused effort with young people to do this.
That's
tight. They're going to kill it.
Yeah, that is a cool thing, man.
That really is.
God, I wish that was around when I was doing it.
You and me both.
Me too, Mick.
You and me both, man. That is so cool, Jim.
Yeah,
that is really cool, man. Well, man, I wish you so much continued success with this.
We'll have to stay in contact because this is a big thing, man. I mean, we've seen so much decline that it's scary.
Well, at the top of the podcast, you guys mentioned that you're very supportive of, young people and the music and keeping that alive, where young people are exposed, performing, actively engaged in music. And I'm really glad to hear you say that because that's all I do all day. And thank you for acknowledging it.
Oh, that's awesome. No, it's very necessary. Mick, you were saying, they're learning to kill each other in whatever game, Fortnite you mentioned, and there is energy within that, but in my opinion, it's a negative energy.
Oh, it's totally negative. I never saw anything that it's like, they drop 100 strangers out of a bus and they parachute down and then they hunt each other until there's 2 left.
There's nothing.
I'm like, what the hell is and it's the biggest thing on the internet. Okay.
There's nothing positive about that. It's all bad energy, man. And music, for the most part, is good energy, and it's
absolutely.
And you're working with your peers.
Right.
All the video games are pretty much, they're independent.
Yeah.
And then with bands, you have to work with other people. And let me tell you, iGen, they're not so good at that yet. Generation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that is the one thing that you will find. You will learn the hard way, but it is a good thing to do when you get a band together and you have all those personalities and you're trying to come to that one spot. It forces you to learn how to communicate and how to get along when things are kind of tight, and it definitely. It's a definite education that I think we're lacking because, it's more separation now in this planet than we've ever had.
Yeah.
And the internet was supposed to bring us together.
Yeah, how'd that turn out?
Well, thank God for Skype because we wouldn't be talking to Jim right now.
That's right.
But,
that's right. We'll take this technology.
That's right.
Sure.
This damn show does it.
Jim, I know you got to run. You got somebody there.
Yes, sir.
And I know we went long, but thank you so much, man. Great history to what this has become for you.
Yeah, I can't wait till that book comes
out. That's really cool, man. That's really cool.
Well, thank you, Jeff, Mick, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. I will talk to anybody about this.
Nice. Yeah, well, as I said, much continued success, and there's a very good chance that I might get up to Tampa mid to late August. So you never know.
Have to swing by and say hey.
Doors open. I'd love to have you, Jeff.
Awesome. Very good, Jim. Thank you so much, man.
Right,
have a great rest of the day and much continued success, my friend.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Take care. Bye. And there you have the story.
Yeah. And look, we've said this 1,000 times, and I've said it. Look, I know if you want to bust our asses, yeah, we're a bunch of old guys complaining. But guess what? We're complaining for this thing that we all want to have around forever called music. Right. And I don't know if anybody, look, okay, so they've been screaming about the polar caps melting forever. They've been screaming about how, we're going to be murdering each other in the streets. Those things haven't happened yet, but we are witnessing musicians disappearing. Yes. And that is not fake. That is really happening. And if you don't believe us, put a band together and see how many guys you get coming to your place. Because it isn't 1986 anymore. It is 2018, and singers can't find bands. So I don't know what we're talking about, but I think we're hitting the nail on the head.
Yeah, I'm not going to continue to go on what a bad situation I feel it is. No,
this is an uplifting show because he's doing something. Yeah, for sure.
I
wish I could do some shit like that because that would be awesome. But, hey, I don't know the first thing about that. But for him to do that, my God,
it's a really cool and very unique idea and business that he's got there. That's really cool, man.
And all I can tell you is as a one of the, the people listening, if any of you guys have the cash and this is something that you would love to do, by all means, get a hold of Jim. Mm-hmm. And if you can't find out how to get a hold of him, get a hold of us, and we will make sure that you do. Because, hey, Tampa, Florida, that's the lower east side of the country. And, California, they need something. The Midwest needs something. Hey, I'm sure Jim would be more than happy to help franchise out his ideas.
I think that would be so cool, man.
That'd be so cool. And look, and all the other schools that are out there, they can all coexist. They don't have to put each other out of business. You know what I mean? Right. We need more of them, not less. We need more.
Right.
Because it's getting weird, man. I mean, it's really weird.
I still do want to fight for music in the schools, but you know what? Even if you're started in the schools, you could easily wind up in some place like Jim's because that is taking you to the next level. School is only going to teach you a little bit, but it's going to get you exposed, and that's hugely, hugely important. But, then you can go, hey, there's this thing out there where, we can go learn more. There's instructors there. We can put a band together that's kind of mentored by this guy. We're able to record when we're ready and, get some of this stuff out there. It's even if it comes back to the schools, this is the next step. And that's just so cool.
I just had a thought. And, I think the reason that we really need some kind of program, look, I don't care if they can really afford anything and they can't have any instruments or whatever it is, but at least some kind of small semester or, just the exposure. Because kids today, they see these artists, but they probably have no idea where do you go to get this? How does this work? And, the internet supplies a lot of information, but if there isn't some introduction, it just kind of probably gets dismissed. I'm sure, look, kids are not stupid, but if it isn't kind of like, hey, this is how a wrench works, it's kind of hard to figure out how the hell a wrench works. And that whole thing, I just remember as a kid, I think it was like the second grade, we were exposed to music at a different level than just, it was like, what was it? Recorders and, those things.
Sure.
Those things were introduced at that time. That stuff is going away, man.
Oh, for sure.
And
had this conversation many times.
Yeah, it's so bizarre that would be one of the things that everybody, for some reason, parent-wise and the PTAs and everything else just agreed, okay, that's the program we get rid of.
Yeah, I really don't know that the people that made that decision, well, the school system wise, they should, but parentally, I don't know that they were ever given any facts or information about how beneficial it actually is. So, and it's not that Johnny can make $1 million playing football, but there's a better chance Johnny going to make $1 million playing football than $1 million playing music. But that's not the point. The point is
because there's a bigger chance that Johnny's going to end up paralyzed.
But the point is the music does help the mind, and I don't think enough people before these bad decisions were made. I don't think enough people were exposed to that information. It's like, music, nobody's interested in you. We can pick, they just go on a computer and hit some keys and he can make his own little song and that's fun. That's not it. That's not it.
The other side of it too is that I think they also, a lot of parents look at it and they go, well, you can't make money playing guitar. Look, it's so hard to make money playing guitar.
But that's what I'm saying. That's not the point.
Yeah,
it's not
the point.
It's not exposing the kid for his career. It's exposing the kid for his benefit, not for his career.
Exactly. You don't have to be Eddie Van Halen for music to be beneficial to your life.
Right, to your brain, period.
Exactly.
And if you get a band, then you learn how to work with people and, maybe you look at somebody and speak words instead of looking at your screen and type it. Okay, we're done here.
So until next time, my friend.
When we'll eventually be done again. But
yes.
Till then.
I'm Mick Marcelino.
That's right. And I'm Jeff Boger.
And we're saying, hey, get some music education. And also,
onward.
Be sure and follow the show on Twitter @AmpsandAxes. Also, make sure you like the show on Facebook. For news, comments, and everything else, visit the webpage ampsandaxescast.com. Thanks for listening.